Hello, I'm Gary Miller, Provost of Wichita State University. Welcome to Wichita State and the World. Through this series, you'll meet researchers, top thinkers, and leaders whose innovative work is reshaping our community, the state of Kansas, the nation, and the world. My guests today are Dr. Andy Bannister, Professor of Criminal Justice, and her husband, Wichita Police Lieutenant Chris Bannister. Dr. Bannister is also Director of the federally funded Regional Community Policing Institute based here at Wichita State. Let's get started. Welcome to Wichita State and the World. I'm here today with Dr. Andy Bannister, Professor of Criminal Justice, and her husband, Lieutenant Chris Bannister, who's commander of the Wichita Police Department Bomb Squad. We ask you both to come in and talk about criminal justice, policing, the community of Wichita. But I have to ask you, as a family, you're married. Do you talk about this at home, or is this part of your life together in the community?
It works very well for us, actually. We both understand one another very well, so we know what we're talking about.
It does, and I'm very pleased with how supportive she is of my job, and I try to do the same for her. But it occupies all of our lives, our daily lives. You know, that's her professional work, that's my professional work, and we do talk about it at home, and it works out well.
One of the things about Wichita State is its urban serving research mission. And when I thought about the two of you in this particular area, how does that inform or shape what you do out in the community together? Is it harder or easier to work out there?
You know, I think it's easy. You know, it's because it does envelop so much of our lives and our thoughts and really our passion. It's easy to go out into the community and work like that. And I can see it in her that she has a passion for that. She enjoys traveling to the different parts of the state, putting on that training that she does, and I enjoy hearing about it, because then how can I make that work for me, the Wichita Police Department, and the immediate community around Wichita?
Well, I want to talk to you about the Regional Community Policing Institute, which you started. Brought to Wichita State, and we're very proud of it.
Thank you very
We like
much.
to take a lot of credit for it. Tell us about how that got started and what it does.
Well, I had applied for a grant to the COPS Office, Department of Justice, and let's see, it would have been, I received it actually in May of 1997. Right. So it's been quite a while. I've been here a year, and I'm going on about 14 years of having this particular grant. And what it does basically is provide training and technical assistance for law enforcement as well as community around the state of Kansas and also Nebraska. And like I said, it's federally funded. It's been federally funded for all these years.
Do you actually do the training?
Well, we've done some domestic violence training for law enforcement. We've done some, responding new policies, update on policies. We've done some intelligence-led policing training on this predictive, proactive policing. We've done use of force, ethics and integrity. We did some domestic, some terrorism and extremism.
Tell me about that.
Courses. Very interesting. Following 9/11, we were one of the first RCPIs to offer training for law enforcement on terrorism and domestic extremism. And so we did some training for law enforcement. We put 3 pilot sessions in Kansas just to see, kind of how that would go with law enforcement, and law enforcement was really interested in it. So we did a lot of law enforcement training, and then we said, you know what? We're the Regional Community Policing Institute, so let's do some training for community awareness training. So we did. So once again, we piloted the training for community. We had over 600 people show up to our training session throughout the state, 600 people. Hungry for information, regarding these issues. Because what they were getting, just kind of general information, from the newspaper. They wanted more.
Well, do you develop curricula for these that other people around the country use then?
Yes.
Or is that, so if you're going to do this training, you can get it from your webpage or
Correct.
For you?
Some of the other curriculum is developed by Washington, by Department of Justice, right, and then they basically have us roll it out into the field for law enforcement.
So how does that police training relate to the criminal justice curriculum?
We have a nice sized population of students, and in my classes I'll have officers that are in service. I mean,
getting degrees?
active.
Okay.
active law enforcement taking classes. We have students that are interested in law enforcement, and then we have some gen ed students that decide they're going to go into the criminal justice field because it's interesting. Right. It's very applied, very much an applied field. When I teach classes, I talk about practical information, what's going on in the field now. We do scenario training. We do all kinds of interesting things.
So does the curriculum have a lot of psychology and sociology in it?
We do. We have some. We have some kind of mixing, because you can't really talk about, for example, criminology, why people commit crimes, without talking about psychology and sociology.
The Wichita Police Department has always, and I've been here 29 and a half years, has always had a close liaison with the university for two reasons always. Number one, we recruit heavily from Wichita State. We try to get students who are in a criminal justice program or psychology, sociology program. Number two, we have a close relationship because of the research capacity that the university has. That institute, led by Dr. Bannister, helped us evolve our own community policing concept, and her fingerprints are all over this department as far as how we do business today.
Weaved into all of our training is community policing, the community policing philosophy, the idea that community is a partner with law enforcement. It's not a separate entity. Community is needed. Community is a very critical component of the law enforcement community.
Is that the way the Wichita Police Department works?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how does that affect the daily activities of policemen?
It's part of the mission. It is woven into the fiber of the police department as well. So everything that a brand new police officer is trained and does involves community policing. So it's a very important part. They get it in the academy. They'll use it in the problem-solving skills as soon as they graduate from the academy, all the way up through mid-level supervision, all the way to the chief of police himself.
I was admittedly frustrated with a traditional style of policing. The kind of policing where you, as an officer, you get in a car and you turn your key on and the radio starts telling you where to go, and you simply respond to calls for an 8-hour shift, and then you go home and the next day you start it all over again. I think that style of policing does not utilize our ability to solve problems. It doesn't use our formal education. It doesn't use our training to the full capacity. When we went into community policing and expanded the role of an officer from simply call taker to problem solver, that added a challenge that for me personally was very rewarding. I find it very rewarding to help the community solve a particular issue that's going on in a neighborhood, and it doesn't have to be a big issue. It could be barking dogs or high weeds in an area, or vandalisms or trash dumping, or it could be drive-by shootings and aggravated assaults. Anytime you can work with the community and get them engaged, and together with them help reduce crime or improve the quality of life, to me that's very gratifying. So
you're out there, both of you are out there talking to the community about gangs or drugs or whatever the problem is in that particular neighborhood.
And making sure that they understand how to contact us, that we are approachable, here's how you reach us, and here's how we come together to bring this piece of information, and to tie it together and see how that affects the problem.
So does that shape your procedures for, say, use of force, and how you would make some kind of intervention in a community?
You know, yes and no. Yes, we have very strict policies on use of force and other aspects, but the community is very involved in that, whether it's use of force, I mean, because they are our employers. They tell us as a police department how they want the police department run. So they have a lot of buy-in. We have a lot of community meetings, input, what is it that you want us to do about certain aspects or certain topics that are going on in the community.
Problem-based learning with regard to police training. What does that mean? Is it more about anticipating what might happen, or is it?
Well, it's being able to, solve the problems, not having to continue to contact people at this upper supervisory level, being able to figure out what to do. And certainly you're going to have to, talk to your supervisors.
You mean on the site, right?
Right, on site. How to respond, what to do. And a lot of it, law enforcement has really gone towards predictive policing or proactive policing. Yes. Intelligence-led policing. Well, sorry. Intelligence-led policing is really where law enforcement is headed. There is no way that law enforcement, society is going to be able to potentially, prevent all crime from being committed. That's just not going to happen. However, being able to identify threats ahead of time, that's called predictive policing or intelligence-led policing. threat assessment. And where's that information come from? It comes from, obviously, law enforcement, comes from the community, coming together. And so the idea is that that's where law enforcement's kind of going, headed, but you can't prevent everything. I always tell my students that. I said, there's always going to be reactive policing. There's always going to be 911 calls, so I can be responding. However, but if you can prevent as much as you can, that's where you want to go. That's ideal.
Chris, you have a master's degree from Wichita State?
I do.
So where did you get your undergraduate?
Also from Wichita State.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you got your degree, and then you went out and started working.
I did. I was taking my undergraduate degree and was just finishing up as I got hired by the police department. And getting my master's degree was a little bit a different road to hoe, so to speak. The challenge was presented to me by Andy about getting my master's degree. I actually was comfortable having my bachelor's. I was fine. I had my job. I had my career. And then the opportunity presented itself for Andy to join the reserves. And I have a lot of experience, a lot of book knowledge, but I don't have that practical street experience. So we had this discussion, and it kind of came into, well, if you join the reserves and get that practical experience, that street experience to go with your book knowledge, I'll go back and get my master's. So it was one of those tit for tat deals, and we both accepted the challenge. She joined the reserves, went through the academy, graduated, hit the streets, and I hit the books.
So you're still in the reserve?
No, I actually had to step away from the reserves for a while because the kids were born, and it just became too much going on. Right. But I did do it for a while. I was on the street, and it was a wonderful experience.
Having the master's degree, I didn't realize what I was missing. Now that I have it, it's helped me on the street as well as with promotion and everything else. So it worked out well for both of us. We
encourage officers to go back and either finish their bachelor's degree if they're not finished, or go on for their master's degree. And the concept there is that the job has gotten so complicated. There's so many laws, and there's so much issue regarding quality of life and human capacity to live together in an urban environment. And the officers are so often thrust right in the middle of that dynamic that they have to be able to think and problem solve on their feet if they're going to succeed.
I know we have some online courses in criminal justice, or hybrid courses where part of it is online.
That's correct.
Is that growing, or is that something that's going to be?
It really is. I mean, there are a lot of students that are not able to get onto campus from around the state, around the area, and so it's worked very well.
Now you're connected with the Department of Justice through your grant, so you have a lot of interactions on the national scene with other people involved in training policemen and interacting with communities. Tell us about that.
We do. I'm actually lucky. We're actually part of a larger network. We were developed, Regional Community Policing Institute was one of originally 35 institutes developed around the country.
Wow.
We were one of 35. We're down to about 12 now.
That's a funding issue?
It's been a funding issue, solely a funding issue. But I'm able to tap into resources around the country and say, hey, does anybody have some training on school safety issues? Does anybody have any trainers? And so by virtue of it, it's been wonderful. And plus, I've just made other, extraneous contacts.
Now, you're connected to the federal government, too, and part of your training. You're involved with Homeland Security and some training?
Yes, we actually do a training through the Homeland Security Department, and the state is divided up into 7 regions. We're in the South Central region. So my responsibility is to also represent the city of Wichita within the South Central region, and we provide training to law enforcement, all public safety, whether it's public works, fire, EMS, emergency managers. It doesn't matter if they're in the public safety realm, then we provide training for them within the South Central region.
As I watch the news these days, a lot of unrest around the world and a lot of bombs.
Yes.
And it's a hard question to ask, but how much of a threat is that in the Midwest?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of people think that, and that's really what catches us off guard if it's not going to happen here. Right. Just like in Oklahoma City, I'm sure they said it never would happen here, but that was in the Midwest. And it had a Kansas connection, it had a Wichita connection.
Yeah, that's right.
So, to have that attitude of it's not going to happen here really puts everybody at risk. So it's my responsibility as a commander of the bomb squad to make sure that my squad that services the Midwest thinks that it can happen here.
Yeah. And how many people are on that?
12.
That's a big investment for...
It's a huge investment, not only in training, but in the financial commitment to the equipment and the area that we serve. It's not just Wichita. We team up with the ATF office here, and served 69 counties in the state of Kansas.
Did you ever see the movie Hurt Locker?
I did.
We did. We watched it
Does
together.
that worry you when he goes?
You know, honestly, my feeling is he's very good at what he does. If I felt that he didn't have a good sense of things, a good grip on things, I'd be a little concerned. Am I concerned? Well, sure. I mean, there's always kind of in the back of my mind. But I know that he knows his job. He loves his job, and he's providing a real service.
Do you train a lot? Do you have to train pretty much continuously?
Constantly. Yeah, it is constantly. All the different aspects of a bomb squad. You know, back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, all you needed was a set of hand tools and a rope. But it has advanced tremendously with the use of cell phones and electronic triggering devices, and you name it, and it's very advanced. So we train from the basic explosive-related materials all the way up to the most advanced triggering mechanisms.
The day in the academy that the bomb squad came to speak with us and give us a demonstration, I went home that night and told my wife that I was going to be a bomb technician on the police department, or on the bomb squad. And I waited for patiently and impatiently for my opportunity to do so. There are so many different things that we do on the bomb squad. We are breachers for the SWAT team. We build things. We destroy things. We respond to incidents. It's like playing a game of chess with somebody and you're already six moves behind. I love the challenge, the technical aspect, learning electricity, electronics, all the technical, the mechanical components. I mean, it's so much knowledge. It never gets dull. It never gets boring, and we're constantly doing something new and exciting and experimenting. The learning never stops. The bad guys are constantly adapting. They're constantly changing the ways that they do things. There's recipes on the internet that get put on there daily. There's no end to the things that they try and the ways that they can put those things together.
When you're training policemen in communities over the years, you've had this opportunity for a long time. How's technology changed that in both policing and how you train policemen and how you interact with the community?
You know, technology it's been very significant. It's become much more sophisticated, but what you do find is a lot of law enforcement agencies, especially the underserved law enforcement agencies, those underserved populations, communities, they don't have access.
They don't have access
to a lot of the
this simple
technology, some of the basic technology. Some are in the internet. Didn't have access to the internet. We're doing training on the internet, and so that's a concern. In our training, the RCPI, we really target the underserved agencies, communities, but we also certainly work with the larger agencies.
Chris, how long have you been with the police department?
It's 17 years now, 17 very short, good years.
Very short. So you weren't always the commander of the bomb squad. How did this start? Trace the history. You started out on the street?
I did. Like every officer that gets hired by the Wichita Police Department, they're going to start out on the street, most likely overnight, and that's what I did.
Oh, the night shift.
The night shift, yes. I worked nights for a few years and then had the opportunity to go to their SCAT team, which is the Special Community Action Team.
Okay.
This team focuses on street-level gang activity and drug activity, and any other spike in crime that's occurring, then that particular team can address it, whether it's a burglary ring, a robbery ring, whatever it is. It's basically a team of officers that you can apply to a problem.
They're out there asking a lot of questions, trying to develop intelligence about that.
Exactly. So I did that for a few years, and then went to the undercover narcotics section as a detective, and did that for a while, and that was eye-opening to say the least.
Explain that.
Well, my responsibility in that unit was to buy drugs as an undercover officer. So I let my hair grow, looked a little different, and I was in this position as we were dating, and in this position approaching our wedding date. And did not look exactly like she, I think, had hoped that I would look at the time, because the hair was growing a little longer, the beard, etc. And as coincidence would have it, right before we get married, I asked for and was able to transfer to the gang felony assault unit. and was able to shave, cut my hair about, what, a week before the wedding.
Did you recognize him?
I was like, who is this guy?
But that was a very interesting job, and I enjoyed that. And ultimately, I went back to it as a supervisor, but I'll get to that in just a second. From the gang felony assault section, I did that for a while and charged basically any gang activity that was occurring in the city, whether it was in federal court or state court or municipal. I charged it in the appropriate venue. Then I was promoted to sergeant, and as you promote up the ranks, you have to start back over. So as a sergeant, which supervises...
Rookie sergeant.
Yeah, absolutely. I go back to the streets and back to nights.
Okay.
I did that for a while, and then was able to go back to the SCAT team as their immediate supervisor. Did that for a number of years, and then was promoted to lieutenant, and then went back to the streets again, started over, and currently I supervise the undercover section again as a lieutenant, and that's more administrative than anything. I handle the paperwork, any of the financial issues, the drugs, making sure that what comes in is what is stored and what goes out, that it's all above board, so to speak. And then I have collateral duty as the commander of the bomb squad and the meth team. In my spare time, we talk about policing.
And the phone rings all night long.
Phone rings.
And last night, as a matter of fact, it
Rest
rang.
of
I
the
was out
nights.
till wee hours of the morning.
Are you just basically on call in this position?
24/7.
All the time.
Wow. Tell me about the undercover part. Was that scary, or
It was. It was very unnerving, and you know, I thought that I kind of have a good sense about me. I think I'm a decent police officer, but going into that realm when it's just you, dealing face to face with the criminal element, trying to infiltrate their world, and whether it's buying guns or drugs or prostitution or whatever the case is, it's a very seedy world. It's very unnerving, and I don't know if it was necessarily for me. I did it. I enjoyed it. I was very thankful for the experience. And now I'm behind a desk doing more of the administrative things, and that's just fine with me.
I was a little nervous then, I got to be honest. That made me a little nervous, but.
Yeah, here's a question I'm not sure how to ask. I'm going to ask both of you this question. I'm out there driving around, and I see, what I see is a police officer in a cruiser. Talking to you, I know I'm seeing just the tip of the iceberg here, and what that officer's doing, or how they see the town, or what they do during the day. Can you give me some feel for what it's like to be a police officer, how they see things differently, how they operate during that?
Well, I tell you, I'll answer from my perspective because I'm really curious to hear what she has to say as well from her perspective too.
Some kind of both.
You know, I've seen that from an officer and I've seen it from a supervisor, and I know how what we do out there in uniform and in the police car impacts the community and what it causes them to think and do. For example, if you see a police car going down Kellogg exceeding the speed limit, the guy driving the car, you driving legally of course, will look over and go, what is he or she doing? Why are they going so fast? Or you know, 10 miles an hour faster than what they should be. And from a supervisor's perspective, I've had to take those calls, knowing that that officer was going to a burglary in progress, somebody's house was getting broken into. And then the opposite question is, well, why aren't they running lights and siren? Yeah. And so everybody knows what they're doing. Well, we can do that in certain circumstances. However, if we don't want to alert that person that we're coming, you've got to shut those off. So they are allowed to exceed the speed limit safely to get to this call to try and catch this guy breaking into somebody's house. Now, that citizen didn't know that. They just thought probably they were going to lunch or whatever the case. I've heard the number of different excuses. But the fact of the matter is those officers, there's so much going on in that car, on that computer screen that they're seeing and that they're being dispatched to and hearing other officers talking, that they're trying to get there. And usually when you see them moving in tandem or threes or fours, rest assured they're going somewhere
to do something. Yeah. What do you think about it?
Well, my perspective on this, coming kind of from both sides, you know, having gone through the police academy, working as a police officer and really as a citizen, you know, my feeling has been that there's a real disconnect sometimes between law enforcement and community when it comes to law enforcement is following policy, procedure, doing what they should be doing. Community doesn't have an idea what they're doing. And so community awareness training programs, going out and telling the community, this is why you have so many officers in a particular area, this is why they're doing what they're doing, because if community doesn't know, they're going to make those phone calls, and he's going to have to answer to that. Right. So I think these awareness programs for the community are absolutely vital, and oftentimes they're not done.
Riding on the street on patrol is it's kind of like having a front row ticket and the best show on life. I heard that said once. You get to see a whole different side of life that is it's exciting. It's sometimes a little bit scary. Sometimes it's just plain boring also, but you just see people in their worst state, and you're trying to bring a little bit of organization, a little bit of help to them in some of the worst times of their life, and you see it every single day. So it really changes you, but by the same token, you feel good about what you're doing.
Do either of you get involved with legislation or state policy making or federal policy making with regard to policing? Are you even allowed to do that, I guess?
We are allowed to do it within the professional world. For example, several years back we saw a rash of hoax explosive devices and chemical reaction bombs within the city. It was almost at the epidemic level. We were going out all the time for these acid bombs, which are a pressure device basically. And there was no state statute to deal with the damage. We were having kids hurt, we were having adults hurt, we were having property damage. So there was this problem, and we had no statute to specifically deal with it. So the solution to that was I contacted all the bomb squads in the state. We had a meeting. Are you guys seeing the same thing? Yes, we are. We came up with some specific language that dealt with this problem. We felt good about the language. We gave it to the attorneys. We realized it wasn't where it needed to be. Right. They edited it, gave it back to us. We got a document that we could live with. And then since I guess I raised the question, they said, well, great, you take it forward, take it to Topeka and testify before the legislature about the need and why this has to occur. So I did. And thankfully, it was enacted into law the way we had written it. And since then, we've seen a sharp decline. We had some cases, but we were able to charge them. People faced criminal sanctions for that, and we've seen a sharp decline in that type of activity. Do
both of you remember ever not being interested in law enforcement? Was this something that you always wanted to do, or is it?
No, I don't want to tell you how I got interested in it.
No,
I don't really want to say
right.
this. But you know, I'm from the Chicago area.
Right.
And when I was in, I believe it was junior high, John Wayne Gacy
yeah.
was murdering those young men
yeah.
in my area where I'm from.
Right.
And one of the last kid that he had murdered, the reason they actually were started to follow him and everything else, was a kid from 20 minutes from my house. He used to come into my area, which was Skokie, Illinois, and he would do the Boy Scout thing.
Wow.
And with the clown and everything else. So he was just right there. And so I was thinking, wow, what a scary thing.
What about you? Did you always want to be a...
You know, I didn't. Actually, I wanted to be a fireman. My uncle was on the fire department. My dad was on the fire department for a short period of time, and I applied for the fire department. But while I was waiting for them to call, I thought, well, okay, the police department's also hiring. I'll give that a go. And I applied, and I always have felt a pull towards law enforcement, towards criminal justice classes, and that's what I went to Wichita State for my bachelor's degree. Never thought I would be a police officer, really wanted to be a fireman, but I was taking these administration of justice classes, and I didn't know why. And, you know, it was intriguing, so I was taking that. And lo and behold, the police department calls first, so they had a paycheck, and off I went.
And a job, right? So how did you meet?
Well, that's
not at the police academy?
No.
No, not in training. I wasn't doing training, and he showed up. It wasn't anything like that.
It actually was a blind date.
Oh, really?
I was working with another officer, working nights, and he said, and I was of course single, and he said, hey, my wife's a hairdresser, she's got this client, I think you guys would enjoy each other's company. Wow. So here's her number, and of course it took me a while to drum up the confidence to call. Yeah, so
the bomb squad guy.
I'd rather handle explosives, let me tell you.
Let me do my job by calling her. That's not
that was tough.
Well, I really appreciate you both coming in. And
Thank you
so much for your work and your service.
Well, thank you for having us.
And thank you for joining us for Wichita State and the World.